welcome back to the New Year's edition, 2024 Championship Playoff Edition, where we get a chance to dive into the exciting part of football. We'll start things out in the 2024 edition of College Championships with the University of Michigan versus the University of Washington. Two explosive teams that were deserving of being in this position, playing out of Reliance Stadium out in Houston, Texas. It was one to watch and one to go back over probably years from now. Jim Harbaugh leading his team to a successful season with everything going on in Michigan, with the baby Spygate 2 to, the suspension early on. The team continued to fight and beating Ohio State, Penn State, and all the rest of the Big Ten teams. And then the University of Washington having an explosive season, winning the Pac-12 with their quarterback who was runner-up for the Heisman, being able to show he can play from the pocket, he can be accurate, the explosive plays and players on offense, and to find themselves in the national championship game is rewarding as ever for a college football athlete. Armando, did you have your popcorn ready? Were you ordering pizza? Did you have the wings? What was the appetite of the night for you?
Why are you discussing food? Since when have I said anything about food on this? I don't understand.
Did that just get you excited? Did that get you excited talking food?
Why are you talking about food already in your first opening monologue about and it directly to me? I don't understand. Actually, so had Mexican food last night during the early parts of the broadcast. Florida Mexican food, not that good. So I would have to tell you, we're not Texas, we're not California, and we're not Arizona. What can I tell you? We don't do that as much as everybody else. So last night, I hate to say this, right? But I just could not take my eyes off of Michael Penix Jr. And I felt bad. Right. I felt really bad. I came in with such high expectations, Donovan. I wanted to see he responded in the semifinals against, was it Texas? And I thought, my goodness, if he does even close to what he did against Texas, this guy is going to be like the number 3 pick in the draft.
Right.
But no. Just like he made a lot of money in that championship game, in that semifinal game against Texas, he lost a lot of money last night. In my opinion, I think that, teams won't overreact, but that tape last night kind of confirms what a lot of them probably thought earlier before the Texas game about Michael Penix Jr. And it's not your elite. It's not you're a revelation. It's more like you have holes in your game, and you have questions, and there are red flags. And we saw some of those that I'm sure we're going to get into last night.
Well, let's dive into it, because my evaluation really of both quarterbacks were more questions for, I would say, for Penix because of the ability of possibly being the third quarterback taken in the draft. Not so much for JJ McCarthy, but there were a lot of questions for me with JJ McCarthy, because remember on our last show where you said he doesn't wow you with anything, and I was kind of on that boat with you, but I thought his mobility and his ability to run a pro-style type of offense was one that I think people would keep an eye on and see how he would be able to grow. What's his ceiling? But more for Michael Penix, when I look at Michael Penix, the questions for me, number one would be durability, because he suffered so many injuries so far in college. Number two would be his mobility, because when I seen him at Indiana, back before the injuries. I've seen a mobile guy that can get out of the pocket. Remember the game against Rutgers where he hit the left corner for the touchdown for the win? He had a few big games in that game where he utilized his legs. But you're talking now three surgeries, I believe, with the two knees and the shoulder surgery I think he had. And then he had a dislocated throwing shoulder or something to that effect. And then I watched his throwing motion in the game. And I talked about a little bit, in our last show. It's almost a little awkward sidearmish. And then you get him off his spots, which I give the defensive coordinator from Michigan a lot of credit for applying pressure up the middle on Michael Penix. When you do that now as a quarterback and you see the pressure coming into your face, you find ways to find gaps to step into to throw and deliver the pass. Well, Michael was a little rattled, and a lot of his throws were tragic in a sense of when he had to move off his spots and become more of a mobile quarterback to throw a little bit on the run. He threw high, he threw a little wide, threw a little low. And that's not the norm of what they're looking for in the NFL and the way the NFL is changing. The NFL is changing now where they're looking for mobile quarterbacks who can play from the pocket and play outside the pocket. And the question now becomes, is he a mobile quarterback? Will he be a 4.8 to 4.9, 40 type of quarterback? Will he be a 4.5 to 4.6.5 type of quarterback? And I've seen a guy who is not comfortable when he has to move enough to buy time to get the ball down to his receivers. And he was inaccurate a little bit in the game, which we've seen him all season be accurate. And that I won't use that against him in that game because of the inaccuracy downfield of his throws, but more of him getting off his spots and being a mobile guy to throw on the run. It just didn't look good last night.
Right. So I would use the accuracy issue from last night against him because it showed what happens when he doesn't have a pristine pocket. When he has a pristine pocket, and Washington, by the way, had one of the best offensive lines in college football this past season. So, the situation was usually good for him. But when he didn't have a pristine pocket, a good pocket last night, wildly inaccurate. Passes that would be made by second, third tier NFL quarterbacks, he was not in the vicinity oftentimes, not just inaccurate, didn't see open players. There was a third and long late in the game, and he throws it basically like a Hail Mary to the right side. And there's 3 or 4 Michigan guys over there, and I either it went incomplete or it got picked again. And we go back to the replay, and there's a tight end running on the left side, open, and he didn't see him. And it was because why? Well, Michigan got people in his face. Yeah. The Washington offensive line didn't hold up. And guess what? That's what happens in the NFL. And you mentioned his mobility. It's not, as you well know, and far be it for me to explain, it's not just accuracy getting out in open space. Mobility. It's mobility in the pocket, right. Moving around in the pocket, creating little a millisecond extra, taking that little step right. to avoid. His mobility in the pocket was not good last night. And I don't know if that's the case all the way through his tape, but last night it was like he had no eye behind his head that quarterbacks need to have. Right. He had no ability to sidestep or whatever. He was planted, and that's where he was planted. And that, that's a statue. That's bad. And he's 23?
He's
Dude,
20,
you're 23. Move.
24. Yeah.
Okay. Move. Move. You're not freaking 38-year-old, Dan Marino, 39. Move.
Yeah.
Off your spot. And maybe he's not comfortable moving off his spot. And that's
Well,
another thing that NFL teams will look at.
And like I said, that's why I give credit to the defensive coordinator from the University of Michigan. When I watched that game, and that was their main mindset of just getting him off of his spots. When I watch him all throughout the season, he does have pocket awareness. I'll give him that. He has pocket awareness to buy a little bit of time to get the ball out. But a lot of his throws were under 2.5 seconds. So his movement in the pocket was good enough to be able to go to number 2, 3 in a read and deliver a strike. And that's what I've seen all throughout the year. Now, obviously, this game was a little bit different. It was controlled by the offensive and defensive line. The defensive lineman for Michigan and the blitz was able to get to Michael Penix quick enough where it threw him off completely. And his movement in the pocket looked a little stiff, as you talked about, where you begin to wonder, is this something that's going to become a factor going forward? Now, yes, in the NFL, there are a lot of holes on the offensive line where, you might have 2 Pro Bowlers, but the other 3 may be a little shaky. The communication as far as picking up the blitz and knowing who to block with movement are in question. So as a quarterback, you have to be able to move around a bit. And that doesn't mean move around for 8 seconds in the backfield and running around, like myself or Michael Vick or anything, but you have to be able to utilize your legs when need be. And that's why I give JJ McCarthy a little bit of credit, because he does have that mobility to get north and south. Now, he's shown he can throw the football from the pocket in the pro-style offense, but there were a lot of plays in that game where I seen JJ McCarthy tuck it away and pick up first downs with his legs. And it showed me something that possibly, there's questions of where do you see him? And for our top 5 quarterbacks that are coming out in the draft, is JJ McCarthy number 6, or is he in that second or third tier of quarterbacks if he decides to come out this year, which I don't think it's smart for him to come out this year. I think he's building a name for himself enough where he needs another year to show what he's capable of doing. But with his mobility, do you think that was the key to the success, plus the run game with Corum and their running game? Was that something that kind of threw Washington off because of their ability to coverage in the back end, but not really spy on a JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, I think what threw Washington off is they lost the line of scrimmage, and the Michigan running game trucked them.
Yes,
that threw them off a little bit. It was like, oh, we're getting buried here. We're getting steamrolled. This is problematic. And yeah, JJ McCarthy, who, by the way, in today's NIL infused college game, it makes sense for him to stay. He's going to make a lot of money staying at Michigan. Right. If he chooses to do that. I don't see why he would leave. He probably needs another year of seasoning. Yes. Let him marinate at in with good cilantro and salt and in Ann Arbor. Getting back to Penix a minute, because I know that NFL scouts do this. When they do their comparables, a lot of people have talked about, well, he looks a little bit like Tua. He looks a little bit like Stabler. He looks, they're going to bring out all the lefties that have ever played the game.
Exactly.
And that's going to be what he looks like. You know who he looked like to me a little bit? Bernie Kosar. Bernie Kosar.
No, I know where you're about to go. I knew it.
With one major flaw, actually like 2 or 3 major flaws. Number one, Bernie he was not mobile, but he could move around in the pocket.
In the pocket.
He had no fear.
No.
And he recognized great. I mean, he knew what was going to happen before the snap, and after the snap, very fast processing, even at the University of Miami, and that's the reason that he roasted Alabama, Nebraska,
Nebraska. Yeah.
once upon a time, and others, by the way, too.
Yeah.
So, but the throwing motion and kind of like the build a little bit, he reminds me of a left-handed Bernie Kosar. I hope he can have a career as successful as what Bernie's was. I doubt it, but still, I hope he can. I didn't like his body language, man. I just didn't like. He got hit, and he let everybody know it. He was hurt, and he had no problem showing the enemy that you got to me. And again, I've never played. I don't know what that's like, but I know in my life, and I know a lot of players, you never show the other guy that he got to you, because in my estimation, that empowers the other guy and that diminishes you. And last night, I'll be danged, Michael Penix Jr., he was holding, his hip or his appendix, or I thought he was going to have an appendicitis attack right there on the field, or it was like a rib, despite the fact that he was wearing this like Kevlar army jacket thing around his ribs. Something was up that everybody on earth knew that he was hurt. And to me, that's not a good look for an NFL quarterback.
Well, it's like Mike Tyson, when when he got hurt, I think on the hoverboard, he said it's spinal. It's like, oh, I think it's my spleen. Like, oh, I mean,
you're doing Mike Tyson.
Yeah, Mike Tyson.
Please, can you do the rest of the show in a Mike Tyson voice? Can you do that, please?
When I watch that, listen, I understand where you're going, but from a quarterback standpoint, is a couple factors. One, he took a shot. He took a shot to the rib. I know it hurt. And even with those rib pads really don't protect all the way through. And I know it hurt. Two, sometimes when it hurts, and you're losing. It really hurts. It's just like being out in the cold when you're playing out at Lambeau Field. Early on in the game, you're fine. You're warming up at the heater. You're playing. Soon as you're down 20 in the fourth quarter, it gets colder, and it's like you start seeing people doing this and trying to get it together. And that's mentality of him at that particular point. Everything started hurting. Your pride, your body. The play calling, like you reflect on the passes that you missed. And it's a tough deal because it looks bad. And yes, it gives the opponent an opportunity to feel like we got them. It does. But it does suck on the offensive end when you are hurting like that and you're losing. So I won't make any excuses for him, but just explaining in that regard of what was going on and my kind of definition of it. Because it was spinal. He took a shot and it hurt. So, but let's go deeper. Let's go deeper on this, Armando, because everything after this game now leads right to Harbaugh, and we can talk a lot about Penix. We can talk about JJ McCarthy. We can talk about the fact that Michigan made it to the national championship and won. But what does this mean for Jim Harbaugh? Because there are a lot of coaching vacancies in the NFL right now, which we're still waiting on one more in New England to hear what kind of happens at this particular point for the Patriots. And I'll add one more in there because I think Adam Schefter brought his name up. What happens in Tennessee? Is Mike Vrabel the next guy that possibly is out in Tennessee and then ends up in New England. Is this one in which, for Harbaugh's sake, does he have the pick of the litter of organizations that are looking to bring Jim Harbaugh in and change their organization around to get them back on the winning track, or is it a limited list for Jim Harbaugh?
Well, so first of all, let me backtrack a little bit. After the game last night, Jim Harbaugh tried to throw everybody a curveball, talking about how he's going to move spring practice back a few weeks, that normally they start spring practice on Valentine's Day, and that this year, because they're still playing and it was January 8th, they're going to move it back, to suggest that he's thinking about his future at Michigan. And I don't buy it.
No,
not one
it sounds
second.
good. It sounds good.
That was the okey doke. And I'm not falling for the banana in the tailpipe trick. I'm not doing that. You're trying to feed me a banana out of a tailpipe, and I'm not going for it. No. Plus, you're a weirdo and you think that way. So I'm not going for that. Okay. So not buying that talk at all. Okay. Congratulations to, is it Sharon Moore?
I think it's Sharon Moore. Yeah,
Sharon Moore.
Yeah.
Congratulations, dude. You're the new Steve Fisher at Michigan. You did a great job.
Yeah, you're giving it to him.
He was what, 3-0 or 6-0 or something this year?
Yeah.
Well done.
Great job.
You are the next head coach of the University of Michigan. Well done by you. Jim Harbaugh is
gone.
90% gone to the NFL.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe Michigan throws a Hail Mary and finds a way to keep him, but I believe he wants to go back to the NFL and compete at the highest level. Yeah. And the Chargers are the one that is glowing in neon. Whoop, 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 whoop. We got Justin Herbert. Come here. That's it. That's the one.
I mean, let's look into it really. Let's start with the Chargers. Is Justin Herbert that much of an attraction for coaches to look at and to say, okay, this is possibly where I want to go because I have a possible franchise quarterback? When all we hear about the Chargers organization is, one, they don't pay. Two, it's kind of almost dysfunctional. Three, and for a college coach coming back into the NFL after years after being in San Francisco, is this one in which Harbaugh can really look at and say, you know what? I think this might be the spot for me.
Yeah. I mean, are you kidding me? Look.
Why? Because it's California?
Yeah. No. Okay, so let's do the exercise. The Atlanta Falcons have an opening. I go to Atlanta and I develop Desmond Ridder or maybe a quarterback that they draft who's not going to be the first two guys. The Commanders have an opening. I go to Washington and try to develop Sam Howell or maybe a quarterback.
Pick. Yeah, you got an earlier pick.
Right, but not the first two. And those are the ones that everybody wants. I go to Carolina. They have a good quarterback who's going to be a good quarterback. Let me just say it right now. Bryce Young, I believe, once you surround him with some people that can, block and catch the football, he's going to be fine.
They don't have any early picks or mid picks.
Correct. But they got the quarterback. And in my opinion, or I go to Las Vegas. There's a lot of talk about Las Vegas. I go to Las Vegas, and all of a sudden now you got to win the locker room because the locker room already belongs to Antonio Pierce. So you're basically marrying a locker room that's been dating another dude for a long time and loves him a lot. And I'm not sure that I want to be that guy because the locker room has been dating a coach, and that's a lot of dating because there's 53 guys on a roster.
Pause.
So if Jim Harbaugh wants to go somewhere that's, I don't know, you got to win that locker room, and you don't have a quarterback because I know you like Aiden O'Connell, but nah, nah, nah. Or you can go to the Chargers, and Justin freaking Herbert is there, and he's throwing 34 touchdown passes every year for 4,200 yards, and he's a beast, and he plays hurt, and your offensive line is solid. And you play in a beautiful stadium, and you've been there in the past. You used to play for that team, and they know you, and they're going to pay you. What's the question?
So is this more? Would it be more for Harbaugh about power than anything? Because is this one that he's looking to bring his GM in, his own GM in, so that now we can start to, as I think Bill Parcells used to say, build his grocery list and go grocery shopping himself. Is this one in which he's going to be looking forward to having the power and be part of the GM while bringing his own GM in?
Oh, the Chargers also have a GM opening. How convenient.
So do the Raiders. God. So do the Raiders.
Yeah, so do the Raiders. Yeah, you're right.
You didn't get excited about that. You just like, yeah, so do the Raiders.
Well, look, I just think the Chargers are they're both teams that obviously have issues, right? And have problems. I'm sure that if it was a great situation at both places, they wouldn't be hunting for a coach right now. Exactly. They wouldn't have been having losing seasons. But I just see that. And by the way, the Raiders and all those other teams have a better salary cap situation next year than what the Chargers do. The Chargers are actually over the cap for next year by like some $34 million, if I'm not mistaken. And, they got a lot of unsigned players, so they have work to do. But that work doesn't include who? The quarterback. It's a quarterback-driven league. It's as simple as that for me. And I know it's not as simple as, oh, by the way, your top defensive player is an all-pro. He was at the league lead in sacks last year, Khalil Mack. He's good, Donovan.
So is he the draw? Is it Bosa the draw?
And Bosa, who is hurt a lot, but Bosa's there too. Either one, I mean, both of them together is good. Derwin James.
Derwin James. You bring that up. Derwin James. Yes, I was going to bring him up. Derwin James. You mentioned three guys on the defense, which, when you want to continue to dive into what they actually have some very good pieces. They have another young defensive end. I think he suffered an injury later in the season. But I'm with you on the Chargers being should be at the top of the list. But the questions, that's why I ask about more of power for Harbaugh, because I think there's a big contract on the table for him at Michigan for over like $130 million or something for 10 years, whatever it may be. Does he leave that when he can pretty much get a statue built of himself at Michigan, which is going to happen anyway, I believe? Or does he go into the NFL and just become a head coach and be hired by a GM that he has no relationship kind of with? Or is this more about power at this point?
Right. So a couple of these places, as we talked about, he's going to bring his own GM, and
Yeah.
that's just going to be the case. Um, I cannot pretend to know what Jim Harbaugh is thinking, because I don't think Jim Harbaugh knows what Jim Harbaugh is thinking
Yeah.
from minute to minute. He is that different, let's say. Okay. But
Are you
I
saying
just
are you saying that Harbaugh's OCD? Like he has
I'm not saying that, but he's different. I mean, you ask
Rain
him
Man different.
you ask him a question, he'll give you an answer. I don't know to what question, but he'll give you some answer that may not pertain to anything you just are talking about. I know this. And the point is, okay, so he's gonna get a statue in Michigan. He's done it.
Yes.
It's done.
Yeah.
I mean, what more is he going to be able to do? And look, there are some guys who the have the personality to stay. Nick Saban decided, you know what? I've got it pretty good here,
Yeah.
and I can make this work for a long, long time. And my wife likes it and all that. I don't think that's the way Jim Harbaugh is wired. I think his brother is one of the best coaches in the NFL, John Harbaugh,
Right.
who, by the way, is good at sneaking up on Jim Harbaugh on the sideline. It was weird. I just think he wants a higher challenge, and the NFL is a higher challenge. And he got to the pinnacle in the Super Bowl and lost. I think that's a calling of his too, because it's a challenge. It's like a personal challenge. You got there, but you didn't accomplish it. Can you accomplish it? And I think that he's going to take that on. I really do. I just it makes too much sense in my estimation.
Well, it's funny you bring it up. Before we move on, it's funny because you brought up Nick Saban. Remember, Nick Saban didn't have success in the NFL. So when he went back to college from leaving LSU and pretty much doing almost the same thing that Harbaugh did here in Michigan, winning a championship at LSU, and then going to the Miami Dolphins, he didn't have success in the NFL. That's what brought him back to college. Jim Harbaugh had success in the NFL, in which even that breakup with San Francisco was one that people really need to dive into, because that was more ego driven from the higher employers in the building, and Harbaugh. So he understands how to run an NFL football team, how to get them over the hump, because remember, they were losing for a long period of time until he got there, and he got them to championship promise. Like, they were in the NFC championships consecutively and made it to a Super Bowl, that close away from winning a Super Bowl in San Francisco. So I think he understands the type of DNA you need in order to get over the hump. And I'm sure, I was going to say San Diego, the Chargers would love to have that type of change with their organization, with the players that they have. But let's move on, especially and stay in this regard with the coaching staff. Let's talk about the Commanders. You brought up the Washington Commanders and them looking for a new head coach after firing Rod Rivera. They're trying to figure it out with their new group. I think Josh Harris and his group, a management group that have taken over the organization, and now hiring former GM from the Golden State Warriors to help them in the coaching search. What direction do they go in now, especially when you look back just a year last year when they decided to say no to Lamar Jackson possibly coming over there? What direction do they go now with Sam Howell, or do they look to draft a possible quarterback in this draft?
Yeah, so the Commanders are interesting because they're going to hire a coach, and at the very least a senior vice president or executive vice president of football. who will be over the coach and the GM supposedly.
Right.
And one of the people who is involved as well is Rick Spielman,
Right.
who is the former general manager of the Minnesota Vikings. He's part of that committee, the advisory committee that the Commanders owner Josh Harris has put together. Don't be surprised, and I've seen this happen in the past. Rick Spielman is an upstanding person. Don't be surprised if Rick Spielman at the end of this search looks around and goes, who is the best person to fill this executive vice president of football job? Oh, look at the mirror. It's me.
Right.
Don't be surprised if that happens. I'm not saying it's going to, but I've seen it happen in the past.
Exactly.
So there's that. Look, the Commanders are a team that the owner has money and is going to spend it. He already spent $6.05 billion on the team.
Right.
They have cap space.
Yes.
Dude, they have like $78 million in cap space.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have a quarterback. I have questions about Sam Howell. People say, well, if you get him an offensive line and give him a lot of protection, he'll be good. Well, that's not saying anything. Mm-hmm. If you get any quarterback an offensive line and give him a lot of protection, quarterbacks look really good in 7-on-7 against air. It's when they're not the question of a quarterback, and I know you know this. The way that you judge a quarterback is when all hell breaks loose and you have a very angry edge rusher coming at you from one side. Correct. A very angry and large defensive tackle going for your knees up the gut.
Right.
And your wide receiver is throw me the ball. If you have freaking Paul Warfield and the freaking Steelers front offensive line with 3 Hall of Famers, I could complete some passes. But most teams don't have that. And so you have to look at what happens when things break down to judge quarterbacks. And Sam Howell, when things broke down this year, not always very good. And so
yeah, that's funny you bring that up. I mean, Sam Howell, I was a Sam Howell fan in college, early on in college. He was second team All ACC behind Trevor Lawrence as a true freshman. Then his sophomore year, his junior year, they were possibly talking about him leaving. He didn't have a great year. And decided to stay and try to kind of rebuild his name up, and didn't really work out. He was, I think, a mid-round draft pick. He was like a 4th, 5th round draft pick or so. That possibly could have been a 1st-round draft pick if he would have finished up right at North Carolina. Also, too, remember they traded away their 2 top defensive ends, one to Chicago and Sweat, and then obviously Young going to San Francisco, which both of them actually revived their careers in their new destinations, while the Commanders still were trying to figure themselves out. So they have more assets to trade away if need be to possibly move up in the draft a little bit. They were competitive, and then also too, I mean, playing in the NFC East, it's competitive, but there's opportunities. And they've been in a position where they've competed with some of the so-called top teams, being the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles, but they're just not consistent. So it's going to be one to kind of keep an eye on as we go along. But let's move to Atlanta, because they have pretty much the same situation over there after what just happened this weekend. The New Orleans Saints and Jameis Winston decided to score a touchdown at the end to give Williams, their running back, an opportunity to score his first touchdown of the season. after scoring 17 last year. And there was a little scuffle with the coaches, at midfield, and then Atlanta fires their head coach. What direction do they go in now? Because there's a lot of questions with their quarterback situation with Ritter. Do you trade for Justin Fields? What new head coach are you bringing in? Arthur Blank is talking and he's upset. Their GM probably be fired as well. So what's going on in Atlanta to make you feel like they can change this thing around?
Right. So the way they're gonna do it is they're gonna hire a head coach. He is going to report to McKay, who is the president of the team. The GM is going to report to McKay separately, who is the president of the team. The problem, I think, starts at the top.
Right.
And Arthur Blank is a good owner, not a great owner. And here's why I would say that. Last year, he was asked, why didn't you guys pursue Lamar Jackson? Remember, Atlanta was one of the teams that pursued Deshaun Watson. Yeah. The entire NFC South basically pursued Deshaun Watson. And he decided, obviously, to go elsewhere. And then Lamar Jackson was a free agent last year, and they decided they didn't want Lamar Jackson.
Another team that said no.
Are you what? and nobody pursued Lamar Jackson because I assume, one, they all believed he was going back to Baltimore, and two, it was going to cost a pretty penny.
Yes.
Here's the thing. If you don't ever try, you're never going to succeed. And so, right? I mean, come on. Any man on earth knows this. If I don't ask this woman out, will I ever get a date? Probably not, unless she's,
aggressive,
really
comes up to you.
Really into you and takes the initiative. But typically that's not how it works in free agency in the NFL. Typically it's the team that goes, hey, you're looking good to me. and then, there's a conversation and they, go for dinner. Lamar Jackson was for Atlanta, it was an easy call over Desmond Ritter, and they decided, one, they weren't going to do it. And now in hindsight, knowing what we know, seeing what we've seen from Lamar Jackson at Baltimore this year and in previous years, because he wasn't new to the NFL, they still think that they did the right thing. Arthur Blank said yesterday, I don't think we made a mistake. Of course you did. You made a mistake. Of course you did. And the fact that you don't think you did tells me that you're not smart. Well, you're not smart.
I think that was a mic drop statement right there for you, Armando. I think in regards of him saying that, yes, we all know he's made a mistake. Lamar Jackson's not only one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he's also about to win MVP. So that's one in which I think he understands that, and he's just trying to stand up for his organization. And he realized internally that, yeah, we did make a mistake. But also, too, I think more of the question for me with Atlanta, because I don't think their head coach, or now former head coach, was a bad coach. I think when you look at around the pieces that he had some pretty good pieces at the wide receiver position, some at the cornerback position, the defensive line. Like, he had some guys that could play. Now, is Ritter a starting quarterback in this league? I don't know if he's a franchise quarterback. I think he's definitely a solid backup, but they need a franchise quarterback. And with the franchise quarterback, now things change. So that's more of the question for me of what direction does Atlanta go in, because they have opportunities to possibly trade. Now, is Justin Fields one that I think they should trade for? I don't believe so. I don't believe that Justin Fields is a guy that can change the Falcons around to possibly becoming a winning franchise again? Is he going to bring excitement and wow to Atlanta like Michael Vick did? He possibly could, but not to that level. But as far as winning consistently, I don't think that he's the type of guy that they should go after. And so I look at Atlanta in this regard, and knowing Arthur Blank, playing in my career and having a chance to talk to him every time that we played, talk to him on other occasions as well. He's getting older in age, and he just wants to see his program be back to the promise that they were back in the mid 2000s. And it's going to be hard unless he hires a head coach that can change things around and change that culture a little bit around to get back to the winning vibe.
Look, I think Atlanta it will easily find an offensive mind that can make use of Bijan Robinson and Drake London and
Right.
Kyle Pitts, and they have a good offensive line, and the defense was kind of rebuilt last offseason.
Right.
You mentioned Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith did a couple of things that were just, I don't understand. His playing time for
Bijan Robinson
and Kyle Pitts was weird.
Weird.
I mean, you got those two guys and you're not getting them the ball all the time consistently. Something
Correct.
is wrong.
Correct.
He told Desmond Ridder, "You're my guy," and then he benched him, and then he put him back in.
Put him back in.
And said, "You're my guy until the end of the year." And then he benched him, and then he put him back in again. You can't do that as a head coach. Either you do what you say, or you're a fraud as far as that's concerned. And he lost credibility, I think, in the locker room with that to a degree. There are some coaches who are really good coordinators, but probably shouldn't be head coaches.
Correct.
Arthur Smith might be one of those.
Well, I mean, this is one in which we got to keep an eye on as we go forward. We have the playoffs coming up this weekend. Make sure you tune in and watch us later this week as we recap a little bit more to prepare you for what you will be faced with this weekend. And there's a game on Monday with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Philadelphia Eagles. They've been sliding downward at this particular point, and we'll see if they can get back on the horse to get back in the winning type of vibe. Join us again Thursday here at the 5 Spot. We'll give you everything that you need and a little bit more.